How many people have a resurgence when they're 95?
There are 3,700 that have had a resurgence at 95. I have all the names, few of the addresses, and some of the centuries.
So how does it feel? I mean, listen, you were the king of television in the 70s.
You know, I have not had anything like a resurgence.
No.
For the simple reason that I have been getting up every single day
Yeah.
for 95 plus years and doing the same things. Looking forward when I go to sleep to the taste of coffee the next morning.
Yeah.
I make a big deal out of breakfast because I love breakfast. I love the
What do
morning
you eat for
newspaper.
breakfast?
Huh?
What do you eat for breakfast?
A great many years ago, I had a great dinner and a great salad, and there was some leftover salad. I saw that in the morning, and I love the thinnest slice of bagel you can imagine.
Oh, I like the
with
bagel.
some smoked salmon and this huge salad. I loved it. When I told them I loved it, they saw to it that there was leftover salad the following night. To make a long story short, I usually have a thin slice of bagel with some smoked salmon and a large salad.
So that's what
So a
you
lot
eat
of
for
people
breakfast.
think, oh, he has a salad. That's why he's feeling good at 95.
Yeah. So you think so? You think that's the
I-
reason for the 95, for the longevity and good health?
I love the mystery of it.
Yeah.
Last night,
Yeah.
getting undressed, I always have music in my dressing room. The music prompted me to start dancing. So I'm dancing naked in front of a full-length mirror and thinking, now how do I know that's not the secret? Because I did that as a kid too.
Do you sing when you dance in
No,
front of the naked in front of the mirror?
I don't sing when I dance.
You don't?
I just simply react to the music.
Well, you know, Carl Reiner sang an Irish song for me because he always wanted to be an Irish tenor.
He did?
Yeah, you going to sing anything for me at all?
I'll sing anything you want.
Okay, what do you like to sing?
You know, because this is a podcast or whatever the hell
It is
we're doing here.
It's a podcast, yeah.
Pat Weaver decided that the comedies on NBC would move to California. And we were doing the Martin and Lewis show. Ed Simmons and I were doing the Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis show, the Colgate Comedy Hour. There was a dinner before the first of us got on a plane to leave for California. We stood around a piano and we wrote this song, a parody.
Okay.
When the transcontinental coaxial cable is laid. When the transcontinental coaxial cable is laid, we're made. There'll be more Cucamonga jokes. I'm gonna start again.
All right,
because
go
you're
ahead.
gonna be able to edit this. So the song that we wrote standing around Bud Yorkin's piano before we moved to California was, when the transcontinental coaxial cable is laid. When the transcontinental coaxial cable is laid, we're made. We'll... I have done this 1,000 times.
And now you
the
can't
first time I've forgotten it. And if I didn't remember
Well, you could do
that
another
when
one.
my father passed and my mother remarried, and she's married to this guy for 3 years, and I'm now introducing her to a new friend, and I'm saying, I'd like you to meet my mother, Mrs., and I couldn't remember the married name. If I didn't remember that when I was 53, which I also remember, I would be panicked now that I'm not remembering the lyrics to this song.
Well,
But
what do you think? Not remembering the lyrics of the song does not panic you now, right?
Not at this moment.
Do you want to sing another song that you know?
What would you like me to sing?
No, I don't know. Anything that's your favorite, you know, that you can remember the words to.
My favorite is It's a Wonderful World, which I try to do like Louis Armstrong. But I'd rather hear you sing now.
Oh, you would? Okay, well, what should I sing? Let me sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. But
Strangely, you remind me of Judy Garland.
really?
Isn't
I
that
have pink
amazing?
shoes, not red.
Isn't
But
it Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. So, you mentioned salad for breakfast and all of the other things that you think might be responsible for your longevity. What do you think attitude and spirit? What part does that play in it, do you think?
I think it may be more important than salad. Attitude and spirit. Two little words that we don't make enough of, we don't think hard enough, talk enough about: over and next. When something is over, we are all on to next. But if there was a hammock in the middle of those two words, over and next, that would be the best definition I know of living in the moment. The fact of my life at this moment is it has taken me 95 years, some months, some weeks, some hours, some days, to get to the moment where I'm waving my fingers as I'm talking to you. It's taken me every split second of my life to get here.
Yeah.
It's taken the people who are listening to this every split second of their lives to hear me say what I'm saying now. So are we living in an important moment?
But it's very hard to
Are
live.
you living in an important moment, you listeners? Every second of your life it took to get to hear me say this and point.
But it's very hard to live in the moment without going forward into the future or back into the past, actually being here 100%. Coming to play with me, which is what I was hoping that you would do, because sometimes when you interview people, they're kind of like not there, or they're there in a very peripheral way. And I said, I hope Norman comes to play with me. And
well,
so
it
glad
turned
that
out I wasn't deliberately thinking I will go and play with her.
right. But being present, you know what I mean?
I am here.
You're here.
I am here. That's, I think, an important attitude toward longevity. And enjoying the mystery of it. The fact is, I don't know what follows. Now, you can be frightened by that because people have been frightened by that. But you can also think, holy shit, I don't know what's next. Nobody in the history of mankind knows what's next. And there's something exciting about that. I don't even know if I'm going to find out.
But do you get terrified of dying, of thinking,
No.
I won't be here anymore?
No, I don't wish it.
No.
And I'm not... well, I started to say I'm not looking forward to it. But I am in the sense that some questions will be answered. Even if there's no question answered, that's an answer. Sorry, no more question. It's just another long sleep.
Yeah. But you wake up, you're feeling good, you have a good attitude, you love your coffee, you're ready for whatever's about to happen.
I am. It's a little more difficult getting around. But I'm not at the cane or Walker yet. Nor am I looking forward to that.
No.
But I'm not afraid of expecting it either.
So in the 70s, you were the king of television with All in the Family, which basically it was a sitcom, but it was also Archie Bunker and his family's conversation with the country about immigration, about
You should run
race.
this 13, 18 second thing right here when you said immigration. Run it because it's hilarious.
Is
and
it?
It says it's only him.
Yeah.
And he says everything.
You don't know nothing about Lady Liberty standing there in the harbor with her torch on high, screaming out to all the nations of the world, send me your poor, your deadbeats, you filthy. And all the nations sent them in here. They come swarming in like ants. Your Spanish PRs from the Caribbean there. Your Japs, your Chinamen, your Crouch and your Hebes, and your English fans. All of them come in here, and they're all free to live in their own separate sections. Where they feel safe, and they bust your head if you go in there. That's what makes America great, buddy.
So the 70s, you were on top. But in the 90s, you tried to sell a whole bunch of projects, didn't work, or you had some shows, a bunch of shows that were not successful. You were already 70 by that time. Did you feel like a has-been, or did you ever? I know you've continued to get up and work and do your thing.
Well, how can you
every
feel like
day.
a has-been if you get up and continue to do your thing?
But in terms of
No.
recognition in the world at that point, was it
But
like?
I don't think about recognition in the world. That's a happening. Something happens. Somebody once said, "Each man is my superior in that I may learn from him."
But in terms of like when that stuff didn't hit, when you had shows and they weren't successful.
But I don't think about them that way. I mean, I did one day. I did.
Is this Sunday Dinner?
Sunday Dinner was
The Powers That Be, 704 Hauser?
The Powers That Be was the first of the savage Washington D.C. shows. The about to be elected president of the United States was sleeping with his secretary. He was, God, that ought to be looked at again. That should be run again, because he was out to lunch the way a certain president we're dealing with now is out to lunch. But I was having a good time working just as hard. 704 Hauser was a black family moving into Archie Bunker's home. The father was raising his son in the image of Thurgood Marshall, and he was growing up instead in the image of Justice Thomas. And he had a Jewish girlfriend. So there was a lot to work with. I think we were moving too fast for the network at the time.
Disappointment is what I'm saying. Were you disappointed? Did you ever get discouraged? Did you ever feel like, you know what, the world has moved on and they left me behind?
No. I get terribly disappointed when I did a show with Nancy Walker and the show wasn't up to her. I really felt terrible that I felt I had let perhaps the greatest comedian I knew. I had let her down. That concerned me. But the others were noble failures. We were good people who did our best, and for whatever reason, sometimes not our problem. I did a show called AKA Pablo. It was the first of the Latino family shows. And I told the network, I wanted to live in the show the immigrant experience, which I saw as the Polish, the Irish, the Italians, and so forth. They lived in neighborhoods, up the street and across the street and down the street from each other. And the last of those were the Mexicans. So I wanted to do in California a Mexican family. And I said there'd be 17. We cast 17 people. It's a large amount. It's going to take more than a half a dozen shows to get to know everybody and their stories and everything else. That's my reason why the network canceled. Mm-hmm. The network reason might be they thought the show was terrible.
Yeah, but you chose to hang on to the fact that the network canceled it because there were too many people. It was too big a cast.
That's the way
you chose to see it.
Yes.
Yeah. So you were basically...
That's a point I hadn't thought of. I chose to see it that way.
Yeah, a glass half full kind of guy, right? Not a glass half empty kind of guy.
Well, it is half full.
Yeah, that's true. It is, but some people don't see it that way.
Yes,
they go to the negative, and don't see it that way.
More than half the world sees it half empty.
So now you've got a pilot for
now
a
I've
new
got a
show.
Last night we made an episode of One Day at a Time, a Latino version, Cuban Americans,
right,
with Rita Moreno and Justina Machado. So delicious. And we were making the 12th episode of 13 episodes of the second season. There are already 13 up there. This 13 won't be up for a little while yet, but we just made the 12th episode last night.
But you're NBC pilot.
And then we just sold the pilot to NBC.
And it's called Guess Who Died, right?
And
it's about a senior community. You've never lived in a senior community.
I haven't.
No.
I'm living in a senior community now. I think of the world that way. That we we are growing in our demographic is the fastest growing demographic.
I know, although we're sort of ignored by the rest of the world. I feel like, I work a lot with 20-year-olds and, 30-year-olds, and I stand out as not being 20 or 30. I would love to be in your show, Norman, but I might be too young for the senior community part of it.
You are
you
far too young.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, you're about 35 years too young.
Norman, I love you so much. So you are interviewing like older actors for this, right? People in their 70s and 80s.
We're just starting.
And I wonder...
And there are a couple in their 90s.
90s. These are people who've had a hard time working because after a certain age in television, you don't have a shot, right? So how do you see these people? They're past their physical beauty?
They're past their conventional physical beauty. They are a demographic, and they are beautiful within their demographic.
And you see them that way.
And they needn't be... and how can you match? I mean, this is a demographic 60 up, and 18 or 20 up is another demographic. How foolish would it be to match the two? There's beauty here, there's beauty there. They're not in the same league, they're in different leagues.
But the advertisers are not interested in those people. They are interested in attracting a younger audience.
The fact that we've been picked up by a network would indicate they're beginning to understand. Fastest growing demographic, most expendable income, and just as funny as young people.
Another thing I love about you is that you started something called TAT Communications, which stood for, you can tell us.
But like you don't know?
I know.
It was Yiddish.
Yeah.
A Yiddish expression called Tuchas auf den Tisch. Tuchas meaning ass, butt, and auf den Tisch on the table. Put your ass on the table. And that used to be an expression when I was a kid, a business expression.
Yeah.
Ass on the table. I loved it.
I loved it. I read that and I thought it reminded me of my grandmother Fanny, who came from Russia, and she lived on Evergreen Avenue in the Bronx, and she was here for, 30 years. She could only speak Yiddish. When I was a kid, we could barely speak to each other because I was not fluent in Yiddish, But she came from a different world, and she kept her different world with her.
I just remember I was never affluent either, but I paid attention to it. I loved it. I loved certain sounds. I loved that expression. And I love TAT, meaning this is the company you can count on.
Yeah.
Its word is its bond. But then there's another expression that I've thought of a lot lately. If you want to say in a word, things are terrible, you can't think of a better sound than this Yiddish word. Afzalochas. Things are fucking rotten. Afzalochas. Things are afzalochas.
Very fitting.
Very fitting.
We talked about age. You had twins in your 60s?
I have twins who are now 22.
Yeah. And you went into therapy in your mid-80s?
My girls, I have 5 daughters. They range from 22 to 71.
But you did things... I feel 28 in my head. I'm not 28.
Yeah.
You feel 28 in your head, but you act 28 in the world.
I feel the peer of whoever I'm talking to.
Yeah.
You're 28 in your head, I'm 28.
But it's, you did things at ages, like having those children in your mid-60s and going into therapy in your mid-80s, if I'm correct, that people don't do at those ages.
Well, come along, people. It turned out okay. So where are you now? You just having a good time? Well, I'm here
in your office. It's a beautiful office.
In my office. I love my office. The photographs on the wall are all moments and people who couldn't be more memorable to me, which is, say, largely family, some art.
Your life has spanned many generations of people who are gone, no longer here.
My cell phone carries more people gone.
Do you ever take out the numbers?
By now I know more people who are gone than I know who are here.
Isn't that crazy? Do you ever take out the numbers? I always feel it's disrespectful. I have a contact list. I go through some of it and I think that person's not here
No,
anymore.
I don't take any of them out.
I don't take
No,
them out.
I don't either.
It's like
I
a
like
connection
being
to the
reminded.
past. It's crazy.
Yeah,
So we'll
want to call Rudy Valley?
yeah. Now it's the phone. Your phone has not been ringing, right? But if it rang right now, you'd pick it up because why?
Because I have 6 kids, I've told they'll always be able to reach me. Now, this happened to me. My sister passed a little over a year ago. I was speaking at her memorial in Connecticut. My phone was in this pocket, my breast pocket. It rang. I said to everybody, I'm so sorry. I said, I have 6 kids. I've told them I'll never turn my phone off to them, no matter what I'm doing. My sister's name was Claire, by the way. I picked the phone. I knew it was one of my kids, but I said, hello, Claire? Claire. I didn't know they had phones. Yeah, no, as a matter of fact, I'm at your memorial now. I'm on stage speaking. Well, I don't know, maybe 150 people. Yeah. Claire, I just am speaking. I don't know what the food is. I'm sure it'll be fine.
That was a hit.
It was
a hit. That was a great tribute to Claire too, wherever she is. That is so great. So are you excited about this, the Guess Who Died?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe I'm not too young to be in it, Norman. Maybe you need to consider this.
Well, I'm going to, when
Think
this is
about
over and you don't have to share it with an audience, I'll ask you your age.
Oh, okay. All right. We don't talk about that publicly.
No.
Was that a difficult transition when you came from New York to L.A.? Was that, because it's a whole different culture,
I
Los
came actually,
Angeles.
when I came from Connecticut.
Yeah, okay.
We were having a baby back in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Came to California with that baby. Yeah, we're about to close, aren't we? We want to close with a great story.
Yeah.
So I drove out to California in a car. My father assured me that if I bought a convertible in Connecticut and sold it in California, I'd make my expenses. So I bought a convertible, 5 years old, I don't know how old it was, and drove out here with my wife and daughter, who was then about a year and a half. I put them into by the way, the car I sold at a $30 loss or something.
Yeah.
To Norman Mamie. How do I remember that name? He had a used car lot on La Brea and Beverly. I parked them in a motel and went to get it was a Saturday evening. I went to get a Sunday morning newspaper to look for ads for places to live and so forth. And I saw an ad and I thought I would drive to it. I drove off of Sunset and came to a house that had been made into a little theater, a stage theater, on El Centro. And there was and the marquee read, opening tonight, Shaw's Major Barbara. Well, by then I was madly in love with George Bernard Shaw. I questioned whether, I didn't think of myself as a writer anyway at that moment. But later on I always questioned, if Shaw was a writer, what are you going to call me? That's how much I loved Bernard Shaw. Opening tonight, Major Barbara. Guy sweeping up in front, turns out to be George Boroff, who ran the theater, owned the theater. And he was fascinated that I came out to be a press agent. That's another long story. But and my wife and 2 kids were in a motel while I was looking. He loved all that story. Listen, kid, if you want to hang around, you'll meet a lot of people. I can't pay you anything, but you can help. And your pay will be meeting people. And I said, yes, and indeed I did that. And he said, if you want to see the show tonight, I have a seat open. I had to call my wife and tell her she's in California for the first. She's driven for 5-7 days with a baby, and I'm going to go to a show.
Right.
But I did it. I'm sitting in a chair. There are 3 seats that are in front of me that tape around them. Reserved. Lights fade down, and in walks Charlie Chaplin. Dame May Whitty, perhaps, but I think it's another dame, somebody, and Ellen Malmesbury or something, a very well-known British B comedy player, and they sit down in front of me. My first minutes in California, and Charles Chaplin is in front of me.
What could be better?
So when the show was over, and it was great, it was a brilliant performance of Major Barbara. Michael Douglas's mother was in it. William Shallert was in it. And Sidney Chaplin, who was Charles Chaplin's son, was in it. That's why he was there. But I didn't know when I saw Sidney Chaplin that Mr. Chaplin was going to walk in. Anyway, show is over. There's only 90, 80 people sitting in there. Nobody will move as long as Mr. Chaplin is sitting there, and he sits there. No backstage, so all the actors came out and sat on this stage in front of Mr. Chaplin. And he got up. And he said, you know, he told them how much he loved the show. And he picked on the performers and talked about performances and said, when he's had such a good time and has every desire to pay back, he only knows one way to pay back, and that's to do something himself for them. So he said, over there is a mailbox, and I am the character you know me to be. I read about myself as the little tramp all the time. I'm going to try to mail, in a high wind, I'm going to try to mail up. So as the little tramp in a high wind, he attempts to get to a mailbox to mail. My first minutes in California.
That was the end.
And 30 years later or so, I'm working on something with Shelley Winters. And I tell that story. And she said, Norman, I was there. She was in the audience. I did not.
Let's close with us both singing a song. How about that?
Okay.
But but what song should it be?
Ain't Kelohenu.
Okay. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Ain't Kelohenu. Ain't Kamalkenu. Ain't Kamoshi Ainu. Ain't Kamoshi Ainu.
And a hug.
Look at us.
Thank you.
Thank you. I loved it.